received word of a Cylon attack against our home worlds is underway. Stand to your duties. As of this moment, we are at war.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Screenstars. Welcome to what I would say is a bit of a classic review, and this is for Battlestar Galactica. Now, this isn't the whole series of Battlestar Galactica. I may get round to giving a review for the whole series of Battlestar Galactica. This is the mini-series that preceded the full series. Now, the mini-series came out in 2003, and it starred Edward James Olmos, Mary McDonnell, Jamie Bamber, James Callis, Tricia Helfer, Grace Park, and Katie Sackhoff. Now, for those of you that don't know, and I suspect many of you do, this is a reboot of the classic sci-fi show from the late 70s, or movie/TV show from the late 70s of the same name. Now, I grew up on that show, and it was definitely one of my favourites. I've always had a real affection for the story of Battlestar Galactica. I just think it's always had that epic feel to it. So when I knew that this show was coming back, it was being rebooted back in the early noughties. I first heard about it. Part of me was excited, but another part of me was a bit like, how dare you, almost. How dare you touch something as classic as Battlestar Galactica. And then the miniseries came out, and the miniseries is like 2 episodes. It's about 3 hours long, the miniseries. And it just blew me away completely. Absolutely completely. It felt like a completely fresh new approach at telling the story, and you were really familiar about the story they were telling. It kept the absolute structure of the Battlestar Galactica story, but it framed it in a really gritty and grounded way. It almost felt like a documentary at times. It was so good how they made this show and this miniseries in particular. It never fails to impress me. I've just rewatched it to prepare for this review, and I've probably watched it, Battlestar Galactica. Well, I've watched the whole show and the miniseries probably 3 or 4 times now since it came out. I just think it's incredible, and it just feels fresh every time you watch it. Now, the story here for Battlestar Galactica is it's set on distant planets. It's not Earth. It's things like Caprica and Sagittaria and all this kind of stuff. It's these human colonies. And they, at one point, like 40 years previously, built these machines called the Cylons. These Cylons became self-aware and decided to fight back against humanity. And a long war took place between the Cylons and the humans. Then they kind of reached an armistice. The Cylons went off to find their own home planet, and for 40 years there had been peace between Earth and between the humans and the Cylons. And we pick up this show at the beginning of the miniseries where there's like this space station that's kind of been built, and every year humans send a person there. And it's a place for humans and Cylons to go to kind of keep the peace going, sort of thing. The humans send somebody every year, and the Cylons never send anybody. But this one particular year they do send somebody, and it triggers the war. And what they've done is there's a guy called Gaius Baltar, played by James Callis, on Earth, who has essentially been seduced by a Cylon, because Cylons now are not just like the walking toasters, as they call them in this show. As you recognise them from the old Battlestar Galactica and this show, they can now present as human, and they can fool anybody, really. So Baltar has been seduced by a human Cylon for the last couple of years, and she's managed to pry out of him critical information that the Cylons need to launch a surprise attack on all these colonies, wiping out and killing millions and millions of humans. This then just leaves one Battlestar remaining, Battlestar Galactica, and a huge ragtag colony of humans in ships escaping. in order to try and escape the Cylons and live, basically. So that's what this miniseries focuses on. Now, I think one of the things that this miniseries does really well, and the show in particular, is it's almost like it's a really political show. Now, I'm not a political person at all, but it really, really works in this show. Mary McDonnell plays like the president. Now, initially when this miniseries starts, she's like, I think, 43rd in line to be the president, and then everybody's wiped out, and she becomes the only person left who can become the president. So there's this conflict between her and Adama, who's a military man who believes that we need to fight back against the Cylons, not just run away. And she's trying very, very hard to convince him that the war is over and we lost. It's about saving what's left of humanity now. So you've got that battle of wits going on as well in the film, in the miniseries. I thought the casting here was really good. There was a lot of controversy when it was first announced that Starbuck was to be played by a woman, Katie Sackhoff. And I remember at the time when it was announced, I was like, well, that's it. I'm just not going to watch it. How dare they recast Starbuck as a woman? Now, for those of you who don't know, Starbuck was played by Dirk Benedict from the A-Team in the original Battlestar Galactica. And he was probably the most popular character, I think it's fair to say. And then when you watch this show, and certainly the miniseries, it does not matter a jot. That's one of the things that they get absolutely bang on. You don't care that Starbuck's a woman. Unless you're an absolute purist, and then to me, you really are depriving yourself of one of the greatest science fiction miniseries and shows of all time. I thought the effects as well were done absolutely brilliantly. It's almost done, like I say, in almost a documentary style. It's like this, it's done like dogfighting. It's really confusing to watch. It's not like slick and all this kind of stuff. It's the effects of the dogfights are really, really exciting to watch. And I just have to say, Edward James Olmos as Admiral Adama was an absolute revelation. 100% the best thing about this show. He is wonderful. What an actor. Absolutely brilliant performance by him. Grounded, gritty, passionate, determined, reserved. I mean, he just nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. And he wasn't a fan of science fiction. He wasn't keen to do the show initially, and he had it written into his contract that they weren't going to do like silly aliens every week sort of thing. He wanted it to be not a silly show. He wanted it to be quite a serious, grounded show, and by God, that's exactly what he got. So for those of you who've never dipped your toes into this Battlestar Galactica show, genuinely you don't know what you're missing. It is, in my opinion, one of the greatest shows to come out of the last 20 years. It's right up there. It's absolutely flawless, I think, the miniseries. You guarantee you watch this miniseries, this 3-hour start to the show, and you won't be able to contain yourself watching more. And there's, I think, in total, there's something like 74 episodes or something. It didn't go on for an awful long time, the show, but it didn't need to. What it did do was deliver, I think, one of the most groundbreaking and impressive science fiction shows of all time. So make sure you check it out. If I do get time, I will get round to reviewing the TV show as well as the miniseries. Obviously, time constraints prevent me sometimes from doing that sort of thing, but I really do hope I get a chance to do it. So thanks for watching, everybody. I'll be back with loads more content on the channel very, very soon.